Castiglione and Nicolas Beer. I think that was an excellent scene setter for the two panels which are now following, where we can go a little bit more in depth both on the EU industrial policy and how to make sure that we have also competitive and affordable energy prices. So it's my pleasure to moderate the first panel. My name is Mechthild Woersdorfer. I'm the Deputy Director General of DG Energy from the European Commission. And I would like to invite the panelists. So we already have Castiglione here. I don't think you need a big introduction. Director General of DG Grow since 2020 and a very long and successful career in the European Commission. I would like to ask Ignacy Nimczycki, the Undersecretary on the Ministry of Economic Development and Technology from Poland, on the floor. You have been in your position also since a number of years. You have some Brussels experience from the Perm Rep, from the Permanent Representation, and also some private business experience.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. I would also like to invite Dr. Frederik Speidel, who is working for IG Metall, the trade unions in Germany defending the labor workers in the metallic sector. So you also have been in your position since many years, and I would like to welcome you on the floor. And last but not least, Otto Gernand. As we already heard from Nicolas Beer, you are working for H2 Green Steel. As I learned, in the north part of Sweden, where there is not a lot of sun, but you still will explain to us later how to produce this green steel. So the first panel is about a deal for EU industry. As we heard from the both keynote speakers, we have done a lot. We had unprecedented crisis to manage, from COVID to the energy crisis, and we managed last year in particular to get really through a regulatory framework of the Fit for 55 to put together the 2030 energy and climate with rather ambitious goal for renewables, for energy efficiency, for decarbonization of gas and hydrogen, and so on. So we need to implement it. But we also heard that we need to work more with our industry, the manufacturing, the standard EU industry. We need more financing for that, and we need also to create the business environment to attract private investment. So with this distinguished panel, I would like to start with the Undersecretary from Poland. What is, in your view, the immediate steps to really have EU industry manufacturing in Europe, and in your case, what is Poland contributing?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and thank you for those questions. So first of all, I want to say that it's probably the industry that knows best what it needs. And I think the industry made it very clear in its Antwerp Declaration what they need from the EU. So if you're wondering what the industry needs, please go and read the Antwerp Declaration. It's a very good document. I know not everybody will agree, but it gives us a very clear viewpoint. But from my perspective, what the industry needs, and we're having those political discussions basically all the time, is a level playing field in the global competition. We feel that not always the competition with our partners is a fair competition, and we feel that for the industry, for the European industry to thrive, we need this level playing field. What is clear from the European perspective, but especially clear from the Polish perspective, is that the industry needs access to clean and affordable energy. And this is a huge task for the Polish government right now, and I'll probably be referring to that later on. And the whole government is working on the energy transition right now, because you know very well that we are late. I think it's also important to mention reduction of dependencies. I think some of European markets are very dependent on third parties, especially when it comes to critical raw materials. And I'm very happy to see European Commission working on that. We definitely need more competences in Europe, and you'll see that in different parts of Europe we'll have people with more and less knowledge. And we feel that, and this is my Polish perspective, is that for some tasks we simply lack competences. So we have to build skills, we have to educate people, we have to create this lifelong learning capabilities. Something that the industry keeps on telling about us basically every time we talk is the reduction of barriers. And the question here is how to do it. Whether we simply cut regulation, we probably don't want to do this because it's there to uphold some standards. So what is the solution? And I'm really looking forward, and we're also having those discussions, how to use AI in reporting, for example, how to use digital tools so that there's less burden on companies, but that we still, as public administration, receive the data on which we can build our policies. And I think from the Polish perspective, it's also important to mention that, yes, we definitely need to focus on the most innovative sectors, but there still is a huge growth potential in so-called traditionally strong sectors. And I think in countries like Poland, but I also think in countries like Germany, it's also important not to forget about those traditional sectors, but those that have a strong growth potential. And we don't think state aid is the answer in the long term. So I'll stop here, many points, and you'll probably ask me more questions later on.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm sure I will come back, and maybe just to explain, the Antwerp Declaration you are referring to was an initiative, I think, originally by CEFIC or by the chemical industry, together with the Belgian presidency, and our president, Ms. van der Leyen, was also in Antwerp a few weeks ago. And I think they have now succeeded in many more signatories from all over industry. And it's worth reading it. It's a very good input to our policy, and maybe we can react later to it as well. But thank you for mentioning it, and many other good things you said. But I think there were a few things also on the people, on lack of skills and other important matter. And that brings me to the next panelist, Dr. Frederik Speidel from IG Metall. What is your position? How can we really make sure that our EU industry is up to speed, is competitive in the global environment?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to bring in some perspectives from a rather employee-oriented angle or social-oriented angle. And let me first say I'm not we have European colleagues working in Brussels, and they could be probably, they are closer to what's actually happening. But from a perspective here from Lower Saxony, where we are dealing with the car industry, where we have steel industry, where we have big industries struggling hard to compete with all kinds of competitors, we have to say we need a European framework which, compared to the past, where we had a strong market-oriented approach, and to some extent there were arguments for that, there were good arguments for that, we need a mind shift towards a much stronger commitment to infrastructure, to qualification. We are squeezed basically in terms of industrial policies between America with the Inflation Reduction Act and China with some sort of state capitalism, and we have to make the best of it with all our skills and virtues we have, and we have a lot. And but if we trust that only market forces and only competition will bring us to the right path. I think that won't be enough. We have competitors with they're working with lots of subsidies, with lots of money, and this will be hard to withstand. A last thing which I want to state here is in terms of structural policy. IG Metall has initiated a couple of initiatives. I will talk about that later, but we see that the structural policy in Europe originally is very much coming from a perspective we have to strengthen the weakest in Europe, and we now have a bit a different topic. In Germany we have strong regions, we have strong automobile regions, for instance, and they will struggle hard to go in this new paradigm, in this new technology paradigm, and they have possibilities and so on, but they will need support in order to manage, and they come from a high level of technology and social standards, and the thing will be, and the real challenge will be to maintain this regions in the south of Germany, but not only there. So there needs to be I think a shift in mind. So bear in mind or think of the strong regions we have in many parts of Europe.
Thank you very much, but I just take the mic one more minute, because you spoke about IRA and China and the subsidies in those regions. Is your reply that we also need more subsidies in the EU, or should we also ask others to reduce their subsidies?
We need both, but probably it's easier to think about good investments here in structures, in some industry subsidies where we can do that. Telling China to stop subsidies, introducing tariff barriers and so on, I think this will be a hard task, and it will be immediately answered by these two big players, and probably not in a very pleasant way. So my plea would be to increase as much as possible the situation here. Yes, with money, with skills, with skilled and qualified workforces, and so on. But that needs a lot of long-time investment, and I think another frame of mind with regard to a long-lasting or a wide-scale perspective on competitiveness of Europe.
Thank you very much. I'm sure also here we come back to some of your points, certainly skills. Now, I would like to turn to Otto Gernand. You are representing here H2 Green Steel. I would like to ask you, as it's about EU industry and Standort, and how much did you invest in your company? Why Sweden, Northern Sweden, and why green steel? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we set out really, it's just over 3 years ago now, with a challenge from Volkswagen to support them in bringing green steel into their supply chain, basically. They saw the difficulties. There was not really back then, any initiatives whatsoever of any meaningful decarbonization of the steel industry, not in Europe, not in the Americas, and also not in Asia. And we started investigating how to really make create a meaningfully different product than what was in the market currently. And it became, I think surprisingly enough, it became obvious that combining existing technologies, you could produce a flat steel product that was 95% reduced, with 95% reduced CO2 footprint. It did not require innovative, disruptive technologies. And so since then, really from day one, we have worked on a project finance structure together with the EIB as one of the stakeholders, and we've now raised $7 billion to date. We're building a 5 million ton plant in northern Sweden. We're building it in 2 different phases. We're now building a 2.5 million ton plant with a 2.1 million ton green DRI facility and an 800 megawatt electrolyzer. So this will be Europe's largest electrolyzer when we start, at least. And it's been our way of also creating, as you hear with green hydrogen, a lot of the problems people have is there are a lot of ambitions on green hydrogen, but there are very few off-takers and there are very few business cases for the end use, commercial end use of green hydrogen. And our way of creating that end use has been to sell not the green hydrogen, not the green iron, but to sell the green steel. And it has also been a way for us to create a bankable business case. I think when you talk about capital flows and investments in Europe, and at the end of the day, what needs to come are good business cases, good investment cases. And that's on entrepreneurs such as us. And we need to come with good ideas. And if you come with good ideas that are competitive on an international capital market, you will get the money. What we've done has been, completely focused on producing at the lowest possible cost. How do you think about green steel? How do you produce green steel? How do you design the factory? Where do you place the factory? What are the important input factors in that? And I think that's when we have this dialogue around European competitiveness and European attractiveness in the international capital markets and transitioning the industry. I think there is a huge ownership on the side of the companies as well. These are new supply chains. These are new value chains. There are different input materials. There are different, the OPEX structure and looks completely different in a green steel plant than in a brown steel plant. And so you can't sit in your existing locations, quote unquote, with your arms crossed and saying, deliver to me now all the input materials I need, all the infrastructure I need, and give me a lot of money and I will decarbonize. You need to also take responsibility for entering a new world of how steel is produced. And you can do it while protecting lots of jobs, but you need to think, I think, differently and re-innovate your business model. And I think the green premium that it is real for those of you that are doubters on the green premium. We have 15 billion euros in offtake agreements. These are not LOIs, they are signed and they're with a green premium, and it's possible. So.
Thank you very much. I think a very good example. What was the biggest obstacle? You said you needed a business case, you made it happen, reduce costs and all that, looking at different places. But what was the biggest obstacle and how did you overcome it to stay in Europe or in Sweden?
When we started out there was no IRA in the US. There were no grants in Europe. This didn't even exist. So we built a business and a financing plan which didn't rely on this aspect. We have been we've been granted a significant subsidy or award from the Innovation Fund, which is extremely important to us. And so we've been kind of thrown into that world. And so from the outset, what we looked to build was on the green premium. We wanted involving the customers. We wanted the customers to be the biggest participant in financing the higher cost of producing green steel, basically. And why are the customers willing to pay that? Because we are delivering a value to the customer. This is not out of, I don't know, you can imagine negotiating with a German automotive company whose job is steel procurement department. They do not pay a premium and enter into 7-year hard take or pay contracts easily. So I think the biggest obstacle for us was to create market acceptance, create a market definition for green steel that was widely adopted, and to price that. And the customers originally were pricing into, and you'll see that challenge in all other industries now, but you're pricing into a vacuum. The customers don't know, what should I pay for a green steel? What, in order for me not to look like an idiot, basically, in 5 years' time or whatever, what type of price can I put into the contract? And that was the biggest challenge, I'd say. And that took I think, 18 months to start to establish a market for green steel in Europe. And today, it's much easier to talk about a green steel. When we pick up the phone, everyone has a premium in their mind. They know that hydrogen DRI, EAF-based steel route, it looks like this, we pay this, and this is the decarbonization. Back then, that didn't exist. That was the biggest challenge, I would say.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much. Kerstin, you already outlined in your keynote about EU industry and what the Commission have done and so on. What is the immediate actions you are proposing, and maybe some reactions also to what have been said?
Thank you very much. I take three. Number one is, yes, we can. And Nikolai already called for that. Yes, we can if we have a plan. And you had a plan. And the plan was not to just do more of what you're doing or, what steel making is, but to find a new plan and a new market paradigm. And it's true that the transition is a challenge to every single company, including, public authorities, to adapt and to invent innovative solutions to decarbonize our business. So, yes, we can if we have a plan. Number two is that it's not only supply, it's also demand. And I think that is the most revolutionary in your example, that you scale at the same time this new market, supply and demand. And as a policymaker, we've also become better at looking at these two at the same time. Take hydrogen. The problem with hydrogen was hen and egg. We did not have enough production of hydrogen because investment in hydrogen was kind of constrained by the fact that there were maybe not enough off-takers. But on the other side, the fact of the off-takers, the steel companies, was also constrained on the fact that they weren't sure that there would be enough hydrogen. So it didn't work. We created the Hydrogen Alliance, which kind of produced visibility and transparency of both supply and demand, and it emerged a project pipeline of 1,000 projects. Some of it, to the tune of 9 billion, are actually de-risked in some aspects by public authorities, and that triggered an additional investment more than double to increase supply and demand at the same time. And my third takeaway is that we, as policymakers, but also with the investment world, we have to understand how to de-risk such new business models. It's not only about just throwing money at it. It's not just about giving loans. In fact, the journey, as you described it, is, it's an idea, then it's a kind of start-up. As an idea, you need grants to continue. As a startup, you need equity to actually build your case, solidify, maybe test your case. Then you need venture debt or more bigger capital when you scale up, and when you finally go to the market, you need debt and loans. So you need all of these in the life of this new business model, and we need to understand as policymakers how we can de-risk it. The one thing is to give guarantees and have our partners like the EIB or EIF actually take that risk, but we can also de-risk through regulation. And there I just want to quote the Net Zero Industry Act, which was kind of a revolutionary new type of legislation, because it 100% builds on the business case. Our problem is we want to deploy energy, renewable infrastructure, but in order to deploy, you need to have it. Now, how do we have it? We don't want to create another dependency on China. And we said we want to produce in Europe at least 40% of our demand. How do we do it? We go for the business case. So when you want to build a new factory, you need access to land. What is the biggest obstacle here? Permitting takes ages. You don't know. Your capital is blocked. You're in an endless procedure, and you never know when it's going to end. So we introduced single permitting rules in the whole of Europe, and with clear deadlines. Next issue you have is access to finance. And here we introduce the concept of strategic projects that actually are selected, get a label, and via that label get a superhighway to the different financing sources. Public, but we hope that that will also crowd in the private. Then the next issue you have, and you also mentioned it, is skills. Where do you find the skills? Battery value chain alone, 800,000 people missing with adequate skills. So we invented a new model for upskilling in Europe through academies, where the skill that you learn, not the profession. In the past we've always worked around professions. Now it's really about skills, specific skills like the solateur, installing your solar panel on the roof. And these are portable skills. So you can install today somewhere in the North Sea, tomorrow in the Baltic Sea, in different countries. And the last point, Net Zero Industry Act, was actually to look at the demand side. How can we create these premium markets and help? And the idea here is that we use public procurement, 2 trillion a year invested, but also subsidies, auctions, where the public actually pays to have non-price criteria also about ESG, about resilience, and that allows for these new business models to emerge. A wind tower, it's more or less 1,000 tons of steel. Now, wouldn't it be nice if that were green steel? And if you look at the chain, you have the wind tower, produces the renewable energy, produces energy for electrolyzers, steel, to produce hydrogen. Hydrogen goes into the steel production to produce green steel, and the green steel, again, in the wind tower. We have more of these kind of examples where a whole ecosystem can be a premium ecosystem. And this is really where I think we will have to go further in the next minute, because we've started walking into that direction.
Thank you very much. I would like maybe then continue with you, Ignacy. You heard about the Net Zero Industrial Act and what we want to achieve with 40% as a benchmark for EU manufacturing. How is Poland starting to bring that in? I mean, there is also wind power in Poland. You have transition away over time from coal. And you also mentioned an important factor, apart from competitiveness and climate change, to reduce our dependencies. And I think Poland has been also very much an advocate for that. And we managed as an EU to be much less dependent on imports, for example, from Russia, which was the first aim, and then we have to continue. So how is the situation in Poland, and your reaction, first reaction also to the Net Zero Industrial Act?
Right, thank you. So first let me tell you that back in 2021, the government has adopted a productivity strategy with the perspective of 2030. And I think its goals still stand, and the main goal is sustainable productivity growth. And back then, it was foreseen that the market would get around 19 billion euros by 2025. Part of it EU funds, part of it budget funds from Poland. You mentioned public procurement, so we're also trying to use this tool to encourage more investment in innovation. We're also trying to create a secondary raw materials market. So we feel that in Poland there's still potential to use the raw materials again and again, and it's still not working as well as it could. And it's simpler to use the materials rather than to import them. That's quite clear. we're also encouraging our industry, especially the SMEs that are present in the industry, to create clusters, but to also work together in value chains. So this is probably not something that you see here in Germany, but in Poland, unfortunately, businesses tend to work in isolation. So it needs to be a public policy to encourage creation of clusters and encourage cooperation within value chains. And to ensure competitiveness, well, basically we see that Polish companies have invested a lot to export within the EU. But we're not so strong outside of the EU. And when we're talking about the demand for products, it's also important to go outside of the EU. So we're pushing for companies, again, especially SMEs, to go beyond the EU. But I would say the main task of the government right now is, and I mentioned this before, is the energy transition in Poland. The prices of energy in Poland right now are simply too high for the industry to be sustainable. The energy we produce is still not green, so there's a lot that needs to be done. And unfortunately, we saw an increase in electricity prices after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So we had to take some temporary measures to protect the industry. But in the long run, the answer is in energy transformation. That's quite clear.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure in the second panel we go a bit deeper also on the energy prices, which we saw skyrocketing in 2022 August. They have been going back nearly to pre-crisis level, but we all know that energy prices are volatile, and the geopolitical situation right now is again uncertain. So we will come back to that, but thank you very much also to speaking about SMEs. I think that's important. We heard about it. 99% of our companies are SMEs, 2/3 of employment, and they are not only in Poland, but also in all countries. And maybe this is a question to you, Frederic. How do you see the role of IG Metall for the SMEs? You spoke about the bigger companies, obviously automotive industry in Niedersachsen and other big players, but there are also many subcontractor, Zulieferer, in that play. How do you see how to keep them here and competitive?
There are also quite big subcontractors, as you know. They are not necessarily SMEs, but big system subcontractors. And there we are well organized, and we have something to say. It's much more difficult in the classic SME sector. But yeah, this is it. They are struggling hard in this technology shift, in this paradigm shift, harder than the OEMs, and we need to put a lot of effort on all kinds of issues on different levels, on a federal level, on a European level, on a local level. We have initiated a lot during the last 5 to 10 years, I would say. IG Metall has been very strong advocating towards trying to perceive changes as early as possible, and to bring in partnerships to build up so-called regional transition networks, we call them, regionale Transformationsnetzwerke. We have nearly 30 of them in the whole of Germany, funded by the federal government. And these are classically regions very much dominated by mobility, by the car industry. And the goal is to give perspectives to these regions. And these regions have initiated collaborations between politics, business, trade unions, science, and are working on different topics. And it's a long-term thing. A couple of very good initiatives have already arisen, and here where we are now in Hanover and in Wolfsburg, this is a very strong network, and we are trying hard. But this is maybe one example. We are trying at different levels. We are trying to build up something you could call a social contract between employers and employees. Social contract is a big word, but at company level, we have so-called future collective agreements, Zukunftstarifverträge, where the aim is that the company parties, the works councils and management come together as early as possible, not when the crisis is there, but much ahead of that, and try to refocus, try to go for reskilling, try to be innovative and creative with regard to new business models, new products, and so on. And we have many companies like Bosch, like ZF, like Magna, where we have negotiated these future agreements, and we now have to wait and see how they work. But the goal is to strengthen each locality and to define clear business cases and also new technologies for these classic car industries, these classic combustion engine focused plants, which will have no future basically, and we have to find something, and it's not easy. Let me put it like that. But we are trying hard, and we need support, and from a European level we need support, and yeah, we have all kinds of we have a manifesto for just transition and so on. There you can read what we expect from politics, and 95% of you will agree with what is there on a European level. But the hard thing and the challenging task is to translate this into action on the plant and in the branches and in practice. So and this is what we are doing now. But the future is in a way not determined. We don't know whether we succeed or not, but we're trying.
Thank you very much. I think this is also a very important point from the transition, the social and just aspects, the social and just transition. You took the example of the automotive industry, the car industry, going away from the combustion engine, which is a clear deadline, towards the e-mobility, electric vehicles. That changes a lot the skills we need and the workers and the regions even, and the subcontracting, the whole tissue, the industry tissue. And I think this is indeed a challenge, but I think also there's no way out. So I wish you also here that it's working. And that maybe leads me also to Otto again. What are you mentioned very, very well the business case for green steel and how you implement it and so on. What are your next steps? I mean, in growing, is there an issue with getting the right people, the right skills? What are your perspectives to run your company and grow if you want? And then there are probably also competitors in that sectors coming up. Thank you.
Yeah, we're courting your employees, I was going to say. So we're trying to recruit all over Europe now for very specialized labor, obviously, both on the steel making side, the finishing line side, also on the iron making side, and then on hydrogen. But I think what is an interesting challenge, and this is why upskilling becomes so important, or reskilling in Europe, is, you know, if you set out to if you're an existing steel manufacturer in Europe and you set out to do what we are doing, for example, let's say you get access to the electricity and the power, you don't have anyone in-house that knows how to do hydrogen for natural reasons. You don't use DRI technology, which is the new technology. You don't use, there are 1 or 2 EAFs producing flat steel in Europe, or a handful of EAFs producing flat steel in Europe. You don't necessarily use that technology. And you need also mega project execution talent. I mean, you haven't built, 5 billion euro projects in Europe in the steel industry for at least 50 years. So you are faced with the need of a completely different type of talent and people, and it's also, I think, when you look across that process that we're setting up, most of that doesn't exist in Europe either. I mean, if you take hydrogen, doesn't exist at all, you could say, and on a large scale hydrogen production, when you go 800 megawatts, doesn't exist today. So you need to really bring in people from a lot of different industries, from a lot of different parts of the world, which I think is challenging when you are north of the Arctic Circle. So
I imagine.
That's one of the challenges we have. But we also have existing steel industry in that part of Sweden, which is a big source of our.
If I may, how many Swedish workers and how many non-Swedish workers are in your company, roughly?
Well, today we are 300 employees, and I would say maybe somewhere 180 are Swedish, something like 120 are from all over the world.
Okay,
pretty much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Frederic, you had a direct question.
I would like to reply to Otto, or refer a little bit to Otto. Where he started with the nice, a little bit provocative phrase, we caught your employees who you might lose. And actually, we are very happy if these kind of processes will take place or might take place in the future. Just to make it as maybe a bit schematically, in the past, the IG Metall would have fought for conserving, maintaining the industry where it is, fighting for the existence of Volkswagen in Wolfsburg. In 1992, we saved 30,000 employees by introducing a so-called 4 days week. You might remember that, the 28.8 hours week. And we succeeded in saving 30,000 employees at the Volkswagen AG at that time. Nowadays, we do similar things, but not only that. We would also try to think a little bit further and say, hey, what are the perspectives of these 30,000 or 50,000 or how many employees, and what is needed, what is to be done to give them a perspective in hydrogen in the north of Sweden, maybe. Might be a bit difficult in practice, but there is a shift of thinking as well in our understanding of how to overcome crisis, of how to go different and hopefully intelligent paths. That's I wanted to add that, because these bridges from maybe old industry to new industry, they have to be built, these bridges, with the help of social partners and with a lot of commitment.
Absolutely. You want to react, Otto?
Yeah, it's not meant to be provocative. I think this is a sign of the future of Europe. I mean, we are here. We have labor mobility in Europe. I hope we can also show that. And the other part that will come with the transition is that you will have significantly higher productivity in these new plants. Also, when there is reinvestments in the European steel industry, you will see significantly higher productivity. And so we need to be able to move and shift people around, and I think that's generally a very positive thing. So we'll see how many people are eager to jump on this on this journey, but
but in practice,
take it. Take it. No, it's a nice dialogue.
In practice, this seems to be very, very difficult. We both sitting here, we are in favor of that, and we would, but if you look at the practice, it's so difficult. It's still the old ways of solving these employee problems. We now witness at Volkswagen, the Altersteilzeit contracts. So people are sent to retirement at the age of 55 instead of saying, come on, this is potential, we need it. And the effort to bring them into new jobs, into new branches, and so, is so demanding and so it has to be done, and it's very, very difficult, very, very demanding, difficult task.
No, very interesting. It's also interesting for those who are not from Germany, IG Metall saying that they have to move and change with the changes happening, but it's not easy. I think we all understand that. But in every crisis, we mentioned it in the beginning, there's also an opportunity, and I think we need to take this opportunity from a company, SME or startup side, but also to bring the people along in that journey. We have a few minutes left, so I will do a last round to everybody, because the topic, the deal for EU industry, we touched upon a number of issues from skills and people, which is very much the focus, to growth, to innovation, to subsidies or non-subsidies, reducing dependency. IA, we haven't really picked it up, what you mentioned. But what are, in a nutshell, what are your wishes maybe, or your perspective for an EU industry, what we discussed, what can we do further in order to keep manufacturing or to have EU industry flourishing here in Europe? And I take the bigger Europe, we have also Norway with us as a partner country. So what do you think, compared what you mentioned also to other big regions? So I start with Otto and then go around.
No, but I think at the end of the day, we need to build competitive businesses. We need to create investment cases that make sense, that are attractive. That's how we attract capital to Europe, and that's how we create global competitiveness. And that's what it's about. And then on a regulatory side or from a political side, we need to create the conditions for entrepreneurs and for existing SMEs and large cap companies to create those opportunities. And to tie back to what Ignacy said at the beginning, we need a level playing field and we need predictability. I think the Fit for 55, I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for Fit for 55. H2 Green Steel would not exist if it wasn't for Fit for 55, to be very, very clear.
Can we quote you?
Yeah, you can quote me on that. And I think I think Europe has a few things that nobody else in the world has right now. One thing is the EU ETS program, and the larger aspect of it with CBAM and the new free allocation regulation that was adopted. We have the ETS program, which puts a price on CO2, which creates awareness. And so when you think about paying a premium for our product, you think about how much CO2 you take out, you think about what you pay per ton of CO2 you take out, and you put that in relation to the ETS program. You ground people in the cost of CO2. We have that. And I think we have awareness of climate and climate impact. And that is very, very different, because when you, and like you said, Justin, the demand side is so important. And the demand side is not going to do anything if there isn't an awareness, So I would love to see every product in Europe be stamped with the CO2 content, to produce that product. To continue to drive that awareness, I think is really important. But I think where we need to be very, very careful is now that you have these very large subsidy programs. You have CCFDs, you have OPEX subsidies essentially, you have CAPEX subsidies, and that is very different from country to country in Europe. And that creates, I think it will create suboptimal solutions for Europe. We will build, infrastructure and in locations, big capital investments in the wrong locations, where it does not make sense from an industrial logic perspective. So when we do use these types of very heavy-handed tools, I think we need to be very careful that these programs they don't disincentivize building highly competitive businesses in the right locations from the new industrial logic perspective, such as what we are doing. One of the big due diligence items for our investors has been to what degree will there be disruptive regulation and disruptive behavior by other EU member states that will, for example, undercut and undermine the green premium, because they are so heavily subsidized that they can basically sell at the brown price. So I think we need to really make sure that we set us up for the long term. Yeah, we can save jobs for the next 5 to 10 years, but to build long-term global competitiveness, these programs cannot be disruptive.
Okay, very good. Frederick?
Europe needs to be very sensitive towards the social dimension of all that. Competitiveness doesn't go without the other side of the coin, the European social policy, maybe the European social model. And they're not only normative, but very practical, very empirical. Kerstin, Jorna said that at a certain point of your speech. You were talking about the shortage of workforce. We are confronted in many, many branches, many sectors, many regions, with an enormous shortage of workforce. This changes everything at the moment. I can tell you from collective bargaining, I can tell you from power relations that are changing. The old dual labor market structure in Germany, here the core, there the periphery, yeah, it still exists, sure, but it's shrinking. It's getting less divided. Why? Because all those being in the periphery have now not only the impression and whatever that they are very precious, they are indeed, and they have bargaining power. And someone working for a contract logistic company earning in former days 1,500 euro a month nowadays fights for 3,000 euro a month, and with success. And just to give you an example, this will change a lot, and therefore, the European architecture of competitiveness and IRA in America, socialist capitalism in China, whatever you want to call it, we have to be very, very conscious and saying that our social dimension is what makes us strong, and we have to develop that further.
Thank you very much. Point taken. And now to you, Undersecretary of Poland, Ignacy, what are your recommendations? You're part of the negotiation on Net Zero Industrial Act, and you have to implement it.
Yeah, but I don't really want to. Okay, it's not working anymore. So I don't really want to refer to one piece of legislation, because I think what we have here is a bigger discussion, and clearly there is some tension between the ideas we're having. And first of all, I would love to see EU solutions. So whatever I think on the details of this act or that act, I'm happy that we're having European solutions, and I think that's the only way forward. Obviously, there will be different interests. Sometimes not all of them will be met. But I think given the global competition, that's the only way forward. And when I'm talking about EU solutions, I'm also thinking, and this is very much in the interest of Poland, of having a geographical balance of whatever financial instruments that we come up with. But if we're talking about resilience, it doesn't really make much sense to invest heavily only in some regions of Europe. I think it makes sense to have Europe as a whole stronger. And I would say, to some extent, I must agree with to both of you, both of the previous speakers, because I think in the long run, it's quite clear that we need to have a business case. I mean, simply companies need to be profitable. So, and this is the very experience of Poland. Believe me, when I say that state aid is not a solution. We've tried this. I mean, in the short term, yeah, sometimes you need it. Sometimes you need it to provoke investment. But just subsidizing the industry for it to be there, in the long run, it creates a lot of problems. So again, I think we need to focus on competitiveness. But then when we think about the Green Deal, you know very well what's happening. People, I mean, farmers were protesting the Green Deal. And as much as I am in favor of the Green Deal, I absolutely understand the need to have people on board. So we need to have those, I mean, open discussions. How do we do it with social support? Because we're talking about people losing their jobs, basically. Yeah? And it's not that easy, as you rightly said, to reskill or upskill. The mobility always sometimes is also limited. So I'm not really giving you a very clear answer, I know that, but I think there's one very clear point here. We need European solutions, and I'll end on that.
Thank you very much. And Kerstin, maybe you have a few thoughts on it as well.
I agree with all of you. Obviously. My short answer would be a business case in Europe. And what we need is a business case at scale, European scale, and at speed. Now, speed we still have to improve, but I think we can also come to something like European speed for a business case. And we do have to see business location Europe. Never mind Poland, Spain, Germany, you know, it's Sweden, it's business case Europe. Any investor with a business case will ask herself three questions. One is, what's my business environment? Two, do I have a market for this new idea that I have? And three, do I control my production cost? That may be energy, that may be labor, that may be inputs. So if these three questions, there is a clear yes. And a clear yes, because we're open for innovation. We're open for H2 steel solutions. We're open for new ways to compartmentalize or to between raw material extraction, recycling, refining, and recycling. That will give us the competitive advantage. And I'm very confident we can.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all four panelists for that very, very interesting debate, for all your statements, input, and I think it helped us to understand better where we are right now with our policy and where maybe we need to go more on some of the aspects we discussed. So I would propose an applause. So thank you, and now we are changing from panel 1 to panel 2. The only two who are staying is Kerstin and myself. We change chairs because Kerstin becomes the moderator and I will have the pleasure to be part of the panel, and I will pass the mic to you.